Hello, everyone. I'm not entirely sure where I'm at with doing my hair, but I assume that I did not actually pin curl it the night before, and that this is just me waking up with whatever residual waving or curling has happened, um, and that I wanted to try doing the clips again, and then on dry hair that has already got plenty of volume to it, and we're gonna see what happens here. But my job is actually easier than trying to figure out what I did because this already happened in the past. I get to deal with, I'm thinking, finishing the little book we've been reading on dress development. The Women's Institute of Domestic Arts and Sciences. I keep on wanting to say sciences. That's so incorrect. So, dress development, page 53, number 97. Number 97, preparation for first fitting. If the waist portion of the dress has a shoulder dart, pin and baste the dart edges together, exercising the greatest care to make this joining as accurate as possible. Then, in preparation for the finish that is to be made at the center front, turn under the edges on the center front line and baste them 1/4 inch or so from the edge. Also, baste the shoulder and underarm seams, and then turn back the allowance made at the lower edge of the waist portion, making the turn 5/8 of an inch below the marked seam line, and then basting along this marked line through the two thicknesses of the material in preparation for making a tuck seam. Next, baste the sleeve seams and the skirt seams. Then gather across the upper edge of the front and the back of the skirt and pin the gathered edge to the lower edge of the waist so that the turned edge of the waist is over the gathered skirt portion and the seam lines of each meet. Also arrange to have the underarm seams of the waist meet the side seam lines of the skirt. Adjust the fullness so that there is just a little at the center front and the gathers are distributed evenly across the back. Then baste the waist to the shirt with small stitches. Number 98. First fitting. After putting on the dress, pin the fronts together so that they just meet. Observe first the points suggested for the fitting of the plain blouse and make any changes that seem necessary. Then observe the effect at the hip line and through the skirt portion and readjust the gathers if they do not appear properly distributed. If the dress shows any tendency to fall to the front, as shown in Figure 42, you may find that the lower edge of the waist portion appears to drop at the sides. In this case, remove the basting that secures the waist to the skirt and turn the edge under more, as shown in Figure 43. Continuing across the back if necessary, then pin it again over the skirt fullness. Number 99. When the bust is very prominent, merely turning the lower edge of the waist under at the sides may not make the dress appear to have the correct grain throughout the lower side waist portion. In this case, try lifting the dress a trifle near to the waistline at the underarm seam. If this change seems to draw the skirt portion up so that it does not fall to the front and also gives a better grain of the material at the waistline, take out the basting that secures the underarm seam, and as shown in Figure 44, pin a horizontal dart in the front underarm at a point where you consider it will be covered by the belt. After pinning the dart, pin the underarm seam edges together and make any changes in the line of the waist and the skirt joining that seem necessary. In most cases, the use of a horizontal dart will not require a change in the lower edge of the front portion at the side unless this was turned under more than the usual seam allowance at the beginning of the fitting. However, the back underarm line will be longer than the front and must be turned under more to make an even line, this turn perhaps being required across the entire back in order that the tuck seam may extend in a straight horizontal line around the figure. The use of a horizontal dart at the waistline is seldom necessary in the fitting of a dress having a shoulder dart, and especially if in addition there is a hip joining, as in this case. It must often be employed, though, in the fitting of a one-piece dress that does not have a shoulder dart, especially if in addition there is a hip joining, as in this case. It must often be employed, though, in the fitting of a one-piece dress that does not have a shoulder dart, for in such a type the grain of the material at the side front waistline and also directly below this at the lower edge of the skirt is bound to verge on the bias if the bust is at all prominent. Before removing the dress, slip the sleeves on and note the points that should be observed in their fitting as suggested for the plain blouse. Number 100. Finishing the seams. Carefully baste all the alterations made in the fitting and then stitch the dart, shoulder, and underarm and the slim finishes and finishing them according to the kind of material used for the dress as suggested for the shirtwaist dress. In order to stitch the underarm seams their entire length, you will find it necessary to remove at the center side several of the basting stitches that secure the lower edge of the waist to the skirt. Also, for the finish at the center front, some of these bastings must be removed. Number 101. A slot seam finish closing, as illustrated in number 45, is required at the center front of the waist portion. If the material of which you are making the dress is rather sheer, you will find it advisable to insert an interlining in the right side of the closing before stitching the turning edge. For the interlining, cut a lengthwise strip of the dress material or of lawn 3/4 of an inch wide and as long as the center front of the waist. Slip it underneath the turned back position of the right front as at A, figure 45A, bringing it in even with the center front line. Turn under the free edge of the right front 1/4 inch, making this turn over the interlining, and then baste the edge in position. The purpose of the interlining is to strengthen the closing and to prevent the stitches that will be taken to secure buttons or fasteners from showing on the right side. For a fly piece, cut a lengthwise strip of the dress material 3 1/4 inches wide and as long as the center front of the waist. Fold and crease it 1/4 inch from the center so that 1/4 inch will extend out on one side, and place it underneath the left front so that 3/4 of an inch of the folded strip will extend beyond the center front line, as at B. Next, on the wrong side, trim the left front hem off 1/4 of an inch, as in view B, so that the hem allowance will be 3/4 of an inch wide. Then turn the 1/4 inch so that extends out on the folded strip over the turn on the left front hem, as at C, view A, so that the raw edge will be concealed as at C, view B, and basted in position. Then stitch both the right and the left front 5/8 of an inch from the center front line as at E and F, view A, stitching the right front separate from the fly piece. With the slot seam finish closing completed, baste the lower edge of the waist to the skirt at the points where the basting was removed, and then stitch all around the lower part of the waist about 5/8 of an inch above the turned edge in order to form a seam tuck. Finish the raw edges of the seam on the wrong side by overcasting them together. Number 102. Making the collar, cuffs, and pockets. For trimming the collar, cuffs, and pockets, provide strips of a trifle more than 1 inch in width, cutting these lengthwise if you're using striped material for the dress, or bias if you're using checkered material and prefer a diagonal effect. Number 103. To apply the trimming strip to the collar, proceed as shown in figure 46, view A, which shows merely one corner of the wrong side of the collar. First lay the trimming strip or facing along the edge of the collar so that its right side faces the wrong side of the collar. Baste a narrow seam's width or a trifle more than 1/8 of an inch from the edge as at A, leaving the surplus material at the corner as shown to be finished later. If you find it necessary to piece this strip, arrange the piecings at the corners or at the center back, or plan to have two pieces at equal distances from the center back. That makes sense. Okay. In stitching the strip in position as shown at B, when you reach the bulk of the material at the corner as at C, with the needle lifted, fold the corner back under the presser foot. Bring the needle down as close as possible to the last stitch taken in the corner and proceed with the stitching. This will permit a continuous line of stitching around the collar edge, the stitching thread at each corner being looped over the folded edge as shown. Number 104. After applying the outside stitching, baste a miter at the corner, taking care to match the stripes carefully and exactly, and then turn the strip over to the right side merely to observe whether the corner will lie flat and the miter will appear correct. Then turn the strip back to the wrong side and stitch on the basted line along the miter as at D, terminating the stitching within 1/8 of an inch or so of the free edge of the strip as to permit the inside of the miter to lay flat when the facing is turned to the right side and the free edge is turned under. Tie the thread ends of the stitching to keep it from being pulled out. After stitching the miter, trim the surplus away to within 1/8 of an inch of the stitching as at E and press the seam open. Also clip off the seam allowance at the outside edge of the corner close to the stitching. Next turn the strip to the right side as at F and press it so that the seam joining to the collar is exactly along the edge as at A, view B, which shows the right side of the collar. Then turn under the free edge of the strip and baste it and stitch it flat to the collar as at B. 105. Stitch the ends of the cuffs together in a French seam, making sure that the width will be the exact measurement needed to lower the edge of the sleeve. Then apply trimming strips to the upper edge of these and also to the upper edge of the pocket following the method suggested for the collar. Number 106. Preparation for second fitting. In preparation for the second fitting, baste the collar to the neckline and the cuffs to the lower edge of the sleeves, bringing the seams to the wrong side of each case. In basting the collar in position, ease the neckline of the dress, holding the edge of the collar tight in order to prevent it from appearing bunchy and to avoid stretching the neckline of the dress. Then turn under the sides and lower edge of the pockets and baste them in position over the tuck seam so that they are from 5.5 to 6.5 inches apart and extend about 1.5 inches above the stitching of the tuck seam. Also make the narrow belt ready for application, but do not finish the ends until you have determined in the fitting whether the length is correct. Number 107. Second fitting. Note the arrangements of the sleeves, collar, cuffs, and pockets and make any adjustments that you consider essential. Then place the belt around the figure, drawing it as close as you desire, and place pins to indicate the points where the ends overlap the under portion, or if the ends overlap more than you desire, cut off of the surplus. When you have adjusted the belt, pin it at each underarm seam and at center back so that it may be tacked at these points. Also place pins along the edges of the slot seam finish closing to indicate the points where you desire fasteners. Next, turn the hem at the lower edge and then observe the general effect of the dress in order to determine whether any little changes, such as the raising and lowering of the belt, would improve the appearance of the dress and make it more becoming. Number 108. Finishing the dress. First of all, tack the belt. Then baste the hem in position and any other alterations made in the fitting before the pins used to secure them have an opportunity to work out of the material. Secure the hem with a machine stitching or with whipping stitches. Number 109. You may turn the raw edges of the ends of the belt to the inside, slip stitch the turned edges together, and then work buttonholes in these ends, or merely supply them with snap fasteners. Or if the belt is narrow, you may apply loop arrangements as shown in figure 47. For the loops, cut true bias strips of self material, each 3/4 to 1 inch wide and equal in length for the width of the belt, plus 3/4 to 1 inch. Fold each of these strips with extremely fine running stitches, drawing these stitches up a trifle before you fasten the thread in order to shape the loop. After turning the strip right side out over the bodkin or blunt needle, as suggested for turning a narrow belt over a lead pencil, insert the strip in the open end of the belt as shown in figure 47. First turning the raw edges of the belt to the inside and then taking care that the ends of the loop are at A, are close to the sides of the belt. Secure the loop as shown by stitching or whipping the turned edges of the belt together. Apply the collar and cuffs as directed for those of the shirtwaist dress. Also stitch the pockets in position. Number 110. Complete the dress by applying snap fasteners to the front edges of the closing, or if you prefer buttonholes and small buttons, work buttonholes into the fly portion of the slut seam finish closing and secure buttons on the wrong side of the upper portion of the closing, thus concealing both buttonholes and buttons. Also, if you have provided loops for the belt ends, secure buttons to the belt at the points marked for them using, in this instance, self-covered or pearl buttons of material medium size and good quality. We have now completed the Women's Institute of Domestic Arts and Sciences Dress Development. The entire book. We've done it, all of it. And my conclusion is that there was a lot more instruction on draping, on how to get the clothing on you in the 20s than I appreciated before. And I also think that my assumption that there were no shoulder darts or side darts or things like that was completely mistaken, and that, yet again, the 1920s just really aren't very well understood. So this is going to be fun. See you next week.